Good morning. My name is Angel. This is episode 11 of Saying Goodbye. I was going through all my episodes and just thinking about the long road that I've traveled and where I continue to travel. And this particular episode has been weighing heavy on me. There's a lot that I have to unpack in this episode because you get the high highs and then the low lows and everything in between, right? That's life for me. And I got great days, I have okay days, and I have terrible days. In this particular episode, I've been not really wanting to record this episode and thinking to myself, like, can I just bypass it? Can I just let it go? Can I just stop recording? Because this particular episode of where I'm at in my life, it's extremely tough for me. I know losing, my brother Booby to murder was extremely difficult, but it was a surprise. It was a surprise. It was by surprise. You don't expect death to come in that way, and even though we lived the way that we lived in the street, and we were sort of, we embraced for it, a lot of times. You're not prepared when it happens all of a sudden one night, and the trials and tribulations that come with that particular situation. And anybody that just stumbled across this episode, what I'm doing here is, it's an autobiography, right? Just sharing everything about my life, where I've come from, where I'm going, and where I'm at, going through all the years of my life and becoming vulnerable, becoming approachable, hoping that people could reach out to me or share their story or just help somebody along the way in their life on the road that they're traveling, and help give some guidance. And that's what I'm here for. If I reach 2 or 3 people that I can help change the trajectory of their lives, then it's a beautiful thing for me. Or even just one. So at this point, right, I graduated college. I fought for my children, and everything sort of happened simultaneously together. So at this point, I moved, to Pennsylvania, and to be closer to my kids. And I had to leave like New York behind. And at this point, it's like 2014, 11 years ago. Excuse me. And around this time, my mother, she wound up getting herself like a little, apartment, like rent stabilized and things like that. And I would tell her, like, hey, if you wanna come with me to PA, you could come. Come live with me. You don't gotta live in these places. And because of her drug addiction, there wasn't anything that anybody. You could offer her anything you want, and she was just gonna do what she wanted to do. And those were things that I struggled with, even though I went and I became clean, and I was doing NA meetings, and I was doing all of these things, it didn't matter that I was doing that, because that came not because I was on parole, not because my wife was gonna leave me, not because my kids were threatening that they ain't gonna have nothing to do with me in my life. That came out of sheer will. It was just something that I wanted, and I wanted it to be different in my life. And in order for things to be different in my life, there were things that I had to do. There were no questions, right? It's not brain surgery. I don't gotta know every vein and the anatomy and every muscle. And I didn't have to know these things. If I wanted to live a good life, there's certain things that I had to do. There were sacrifices that I had to make, and there were things that I had to stop doing. And that's the biggest part. Like stopping all the things that you systematically learn growing up. And we learned some nasty shit. You learn a lot of nasty things. You learn a lot of bad behaviors, growing up in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, and having the parents that we have sometimes, and having the friends, siblings, like just a family dynamic. It isn't always the best, and every family has their burden to carry. And for me, it came to a point where I just wanted change. I was in so deep, like in a dark place, and my brother got murdered. I'm over here getting high, getting drunk all the time to numb the pain. Then I go through everything of becoming clean and sober, and I didn't know where that journey was gonna lead me. And I wind up in college, and I'm fighting for my kids, and there's just so much going on, but I still got to deal with my life realistically. Like my mother, and her drug addiction. Yeah, it's not mine, but she's a part of my life, and she's everything, to me. And I was always in contact with my mother every day, every single day. I would call her, I would check on her, see if she ate, see how she was doing, see what was going on in her life. And finally now, after having 2 years clean, now we stumble on to like 2015. I was working a lot on the road. I was already going to look at places in Pennsylvania and things like that. And we, my significant other and I were like getting ready to go, because I'm over here, fighting in court and doing all these things. Or the court process was already coming to an end, and I was already having, trying to get an address to where I can show that I moved to Pennsylvania, just to make the transition better for my kids, so they don't got to travel 4 hours to come see me, 4 hours back home, 4 hours back to where I live. And, my mother was like my main focus. Like after that, like once I had my kids, I got my significant other, and I want to help my mother. I want to love her until she could learn to love herself, and I was thinking that maybe through her seeing that I've changed and what the rooms have done for me, and how life is just getting better when I get out of my own way. I was thinking that maybe she'll see that side of life, and then she'll realize like it's really not that hard, and she would think that hey, I have somebody that could help me out, have my back. She wouldn't have to do it alone. And at the end of the day, it's up to that specific person. Everybody's an individual, and people have to be willing. You can't force anybody no matter how much you love them and no matter how much it crushes you, it could be your child, it could be your parents, it could be your siblings, it could be a friend, it could be cousins, it could be a significant other. And no matter what, if someone isn't willing or doesn't want to make a change in their lives, it's not something that's going to happen. So it's about 2015, 2016. My mother gets one shared apartment, and then she gets this nice apartment, decent apartment in Eastern Parkway. And, things seem to be okay. And what happened was that, of course, in typical fashion, she finds a boyfriend. The boyfriend ain't worth shit. She moves the boyfriend into her house. The lady that was living there, that was the roommate, she wind up leaving. So my mother takes the apartment with her boyfriend, and then come to find out, homeboy was dealing drugs. He was selling crack. And of course my mother was getting high there. Of course she was getting high. And before she moved this guy in, I would go over there. We started making it like a ritual to go over there. Just a thing that we could have where we would go and have like dinner, just really trying to have somewhat of a normal life. Really trying to establish just a foundation of constant time with her, constant communication. And, I was just always trying to help her figure it out while I was figuring out where I was going, what I was doing. And, I would come and sleep in her house. I was working a lot of hours now that I got this new license and this new career and all these new tools. And, I was just working a lot, to save money, I grew up real poor. So I wanted more money so that I never had to go back to being poor again. And no matter how much I made, it was never enough. No matter how much I worked, no matter how much was put away, everything, my only focus was in never being poor again and never having to go hungry. My kids not having to go hungry. My significant other never having to worry about where she was going to live or what was going to happen. And that can't be your only focus. But for me, that was my only focus, that as long as I provided, then there was nothing else that mattered. Nothing else meant anything. I just wanted to be able to pay for everything. And, honestly, I thought that as long as I had money, all the problems would go away. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. You could have all the money, you could have property, you could have cars, you could have everything that you have. And, if you don't have peace in your heart, and you don't have guidance, and you don't have direction, you don't have God, you don't have a lot of these things, there's no joy, there's no peace in your life. And every time that I try to live peacefully, I just kept going back to my mother, and I kept trying to help her. And it was just like constantly, every time a scab would heal, you rip it right off, and you're just bleeding. and you're just going through hell because my mother was an open wound that I never healed from. And I never thought that I had to. You know, I was like, that's my mother and I need to be there for her. But being there for my mother and all these other things happening in my life is like I'm moving forward, but I got to take steps back. But it didn't matter because my mother was my mother. And no matter what, I was going to be there for her. You know, and there was broken parts of me, like that little boy inside that just constantly craved that love from my mother that I never got, you know. And maybe, you know, not maybe, but that's where a lot of my issues with women came from, where I looked at women as, you know, just things to conquer. I didn't have no respect. I didn't have no love. Or I thought, no matter what, they're going to leave anyway, so it don't fucking matter how I behave or how I act, because nobody stays in my life. And these are the traumas that come with, you know, being abandoned and being raised by someone that is numb to life and is on drugs. And, you know, growing up poor and having a low vibration, a poor spirit, poor mentality, everything that happened in my life prior, and now the things that I was doing and the way that I was changing, it was, you know, a lot of times it was something that was unheard of. Nobody was changing unless they were on parole or probation, or there was something that was forcing them, you know, to be this way. And it made it that much harder because nobody was forcing me to do anything. And here I am at 35, you know, 35, 36 years old. And I'm still a broken child that wants to save his mother because in reality, I wanted to be saved. You know, like I just wanted her to love me, man. Like, you know, I wanted her to just be a mom. I wanted to get that back. And, you know, like, being clean, it really started to, like, break down all the walls in my heart and in my life. And I started to understand a lot of things. And it was, for me, it was really simple. Just show up. Just be there. And, but my mother was still getting high, and she didn't understand none of that. And how could I expect her to? You know, like, she left us as little kids. You know, I couldn't imagine, like, leaving my kids, willingly leaving my kids and walking away and saying, "Oh, I'm not gonna do this." And you know, she made her choices, and I made mine, and my choices were different. My choices were that no matter how much it hurt me, no matter how much pain it brought me in my heart and in my spirit, I just couldn't walk away from my kids. I couldn't walk away from my life. You know, I couldn't just keep numbing out and just acting like life wasn't happening. Like if my brother didn't get murdered, like I didn't go through these things, like I didn't just want love in my life. I couldn't pretend anymore. It was just overflowing. It was just like pouring out my eyes, you know, like it was just, it had overtaken me, and I had two choices. You know, you continue to live that life, you continue numbing out, so one day you punch your clock and you OD and you're no longer here. Or you make a hard choice and you change everything about your life. and you face reality that your life really isn't that good. You know, and you've been through a lot of things that nobody would judge you, no matter which direction you chose. You know, and then I had to decide what type of person I was going to be, what type of man I was, and what type of man I wanted to become. You know, and no matter what, I just couldn't leave my mother alone. I had to constantly check on her, you know, check up after her. And, you know, it's the same thing like when I was a kid. You know, I'm doing the same thing as an adult. And they say that, you know, like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. And, you know, I just wasn't working my program. I wasn't working my steps. At this point, I was already going into like 3 or 4 years clean. And I didn't care what any rooms had to say. It wasn't healthy for me to be around my mother. I shouldn't have had that much communication. And at this point, I needed to focus on my life and just continue moving forward. And that is not what I was doing. I was clean and I was doing what Angel wanted to do. Because I love my mother, because I had to be dedicated to her, because I had to love her because she needed me, and all of that fucking bullshit. Because the truth is that she didn't give a fuck about me. And I believe that somewhere deep down inside of her, she wanted to care. She wanted to be different, but she wasn't. The turmoil that she caused in my life, it was the abandonment, the you know, just, you know, like, it's tough because, like, as I talk to you, I'm a grown man. But, like, inside, I feel like that little kid. Like, I'm like, damn, like, why? Why you just couldn't be a mom? You know, like, why couldn't you just be what we needed you to be? We didn't need that much. We just needed you. And as a parent, man, I think that I'm supposed to, like, show up in all these ways financially, and I'm supposed to be like this Superman and stuff, and that shit ain't realistic, man. Life breaks you down. You know, and I have 3 kids, and they're all 3 different people. One of them is young. You know, I'm a grandfather. My daughter just had a baby. You know, and my kids are all different ages, and they're in different timelines, and I gotta meet them all where they're at, and I make it my priority to try to just meet them where they're at without judging anything, you know, and just trying to show up as the best version of me in different ways. And as hard as that is, I will never leave unless I'm no longer here, and that's what, you know, God calls me home. And as I go and I wind up, excuse me, and I wind up moving to Pennsylvania, I'm living out there. Things are getting worse with my mother, and she, you know, I start getting more phone calls. I start getting phone calls from the boyfriend talking about how she's, like, going on binges and she's staying out for, like, 2 days, 3 days. Now she's going back to her runs. And the runs, we used to call it, when she would be out for, like, a month or 2. Nobody knows where she's at. She's in crack houses, dope houses, you know, just getting high and never coming home. And we never had contact with her. You know, at that point, I already started to see the writing on the wall. I started to see that things were getting worse. And, I was struggling a lot. On one hand, I had everything that I wanted and everything that I aspired to work for and aspired to be. I had those things, but I couldn't pull my mother out from the darkness of addiction because that wasn't my responsibility, but I wasn't trying to hear that at that time. I wanted to go and be there, and I was going to be there at all costs, no matter what. And, I still don't understand why love didn't conquer that addiction. Why she couldn't find God, she couldn't find meetings, why she couldn't find just going cold turkey or just wanting to love herself in those ways. Why it didn't happen. And the only decision that I could come up with is because she didn't choose that. That wasn't her choice. She didn't choose, to be a grandmother. She didn't choose to accept the fact that she was getting older. She didn't choose to accept the fact that she had a son that was always there for her, trying to help her to make the right decision and go in the right direction. She didn't pay attention to any of the signs, and neither did I. So I'm constantly in her life, while juggling a 60-hour work week, 70-hour work week. I was always on the road. My significant other, her father started getting sick around 2015. And it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of traveling. It was just so much to deal with. And it was just such a strain on our relationship, and on top of that, I'm getting my daughter every 2 weeks. And my son would come whenever he wanted. And in the beginning, he started coming, and, they were angry. I'm sure they were angry at me, especially like my son was a little older and he didn't understand that shit. All he's hearing is what his mother's saying. It was just so much turmoil. Even though I was doing the right thing, even though I was staying clean, remaining vigilant, showing up constantly, day in, day out, trying to be present, my life was chaotic. My life was extremely chaotic. And I wasn't working my program. I didn't have no sponsor. I wasn't grounded. I wasn't doing anything that I was supposed to do, but I knew that I didn't want to get high again. And I'm over here looking for my mother, trying to find her. And then come to find out, they call me. Some guy called me on the phone. And he told me, hey, man, your mother's over here. She's in this house, and we're trying to get her out. And if we call the cops, she's going to jail, and your number was in her phone. She was trying to sell her phone to us. And, I went to go pick up my mother that day, man. And that shit was the most heart-wrenching experience. To go pick up my mother from a crack house. And because I was a child when foster care or the state came and took me away from her, I didn't understand the full spectrum of what was really going on. But this time, when I went to pick her up, it was like towards the ending of 2016. And when I went to go get her, I had to take off my shirt and put it on her. She was like, she wasn't dressed. You know, and I had to, yeah, I don't know, man. I know I just went and I got her out of that crack house. And I didn't flip on her. I didn't get crazy. I was just so hurt, man. Like, just seeing what drugs can do to a person. She was slumped within herself. Her head was down. She was defeated. She was just like, she wasn't there. She was there, but she wasn't. She was just so down. And I remember I went and I picked her up and I brought her back with me to Pennsylvania, because I was like, maybe if she gets some time in between, and maybe, just maybe, if she sees, you know, everything going on and she got a fridge full of food and everything is good for her, then maybe she'll just change. But that's not what she wanted. That's what I wanted. You know, it wasn't something that she didn't ask me for that. She didn't ask me to go in that crack house and take her out. She didn't ask me to put clothes on her because she shouldn't come outside like that, or she shouldn't be standing in the middle of someone's apartment like that. You know, I told her, just come with me. From Eastern Parkway, I went straight to Pennsylvania. And that was probably like one of the biggest heartbreaks, just seeing my mother like that. You know. And here I am, clean. Here I am, you know, I got my own little car and I got my own apartment. I got all these things. I got a little money in the bank. And none of that shit matters, man. Because you can't change anybody. You could give them everything. But if they don't want to change, yeah, there's nothing you could do. And I don't know, you know, if it bothered her that I was clean or that I was changing or that I was different. I don't know what it was. But the truth is, it had nothing to do with me. And I understand that now after several years, you know, of maturing and going to therapy and getting back into going to meetings and stuff like that. These were things that, you know, I started to learn. So I pick my mom up, take her out of there. The guy's like, I'm not gonna call the cops. You know, just please get out of here. And I just took her with me, left. I came to Pennsylvania. I called my significant other. She was there, so I drove like 2 hours. I get to the front of my apartment complex. And when I get to the front of my apartment complex, the minute I get there, she's telling me she don't want to be there. She wants to go back home. She wants to go back to where the boyfriend's at, where he's selling crack out of. Yeah, of course, she wants to go get high. And she's adamant about it. She's flipping out. She's just angry. And I was trying to, you know, like handle everything with care and with love. And at that point, like after going and driving 2 hours to go get her, driving 2 hours back, and then getting to the front of my house and then coming back and then getting to the front of my house and her, like she was like a child. I want to go back home, and she was just flipping out. My significant other was like, you're going to have to take her back. You can't force her to be in here, because I was like, I don't give a fuck shit. I ain't taking her back. She's going to come here. And I was just, had this rage inside of me that I didn't care. You know, I'm not working on my steps. I'm not working on a program. I don't have a sponsor. I stopped going to meetings. I'm like 4 or 5 years. I'm clean, and I'm just like, oh yeah, it don't matter. As long as I don't get high, it don't matter. Wrong. Wrong. Boy, was I that wrong. I was wrong. And I was absolutely wrong. And I had no choice after getting to New York, picking her up, coming back to Pennsylvania, getting to the front of my doorstep, and her flipping out and causing like a scene, like I'm not going, I want to go back home, and I had no choice. I don't even believe that, if I'm correct, I don't even believe that I got time to like stay there, because she was so pissed off and she just wanted to go back. She could have told me that when we was in New York, and she didn't, because I wasn't trying to hear that, and I didn't even ask her what she wanted to do. Ask her, I didn't even ask her if she wanted to go to rehab or do something to get herself clean. I didn't ask her anything. I just did what I wanted to do. And that's exactly what got me all the fucking problems I had. Getting high, hanging out, doing all this shit, doing all the things that I learned, and not listening, and not asking questions, and not trying to just do things different or just see where she was at. I didn't care. I didn't care to ask. And I had to take her back home. But on my way going back to Brooklyn, I had to drive back to Brooklyn and then drive back home. So it's going to be like, I had to be like 8 hours on the road, man. 2 to New York, 2 back, 2 going, 2 coming back again. And, like, at that point, I fucking hated her. Like, I was so mad in that moment. I just had so much. It wasn't hate. I was just so broken. Like, she just can't do nothing for nobody else. Yeah, you fucking right, because she can't do it for herself. And she's not willing to do it for herself. So how could I expect her to show up for me in those ways? It was just unrealistic expectations, and I expected that. I expected that shit. Because she ain't never do nothing for me. She never did the right thing. This one time she could do the right thing. She could do what I want her to do. I just want to control the situation, man. I'm over here thinking, oh, there's no understanding in her, and she doesn't understand these things, and she needs to learn. And the truth is that I needed to learn. I needed to understand that she didn't want to change. That's not what she wanted for her life. That's not where she wanted to be. So I drive her back, and on my way, my significant other's like, I'm going to come with you. I try to talk her out of it, because I already knew I was going to blow up. My significant other comes, and I blew up in the car on the way down. I said everything that was in my heart and in my spirit about how much of a terrible person she was. Terrible mother. She didn't love nobody. She's inconsiderate. She's a disgusting human being. I said a lot of bad things to my mother. And it got to the point that she snapped too, and she was like, all right, that's it. Please stop. And I stopped. I was just giving her all the poison that was inside of me. And let me tell you, I thought it would make me feel better, and it didn't. I kicked her while she was down. I kicked her while she was down. And I'm not proud of it, but I'm human. And, I got feelings too. And at that point, I was thinking, what about me? But it wasn't me, it was the little boy. It was that same little boy, and I brought this all on myself because I intervened and all of that. I could have said, call the cops. I'm not getting involved with that. But we make choices in life. And with them choices, I understand what comes after. And I understand what comes with it. And I made those choices. I made the choice to be there. I made the choice to go pick her up. She didn't ask me to do that. And I'm over here trying to put blame on her. And I needed to accept things for myself. The way they were and what they were, and that things were never going to change. Shortly after that, they removed her from that apartment where she was at with her drug-dealing boyfriend. And they moved her into another apartment with another lady, and that lady wasn't having it. She wasn't trying to let her boyfriend come visit, nothing. And that was the case. That was what was going on. And, when that took place and that was happening, in the process, my mother wound up taking her boyfriend's drugs. It was schizophrenic medication. And that gave her a stroke. She fell in the bathtub, and her roommate used to go out on the weekends. She found my mother upside down 2 days later inside the bathtub. Called the ambulance. They rushed my mother to the hospital. I was wondering why I haven't heard from her. I was calling her, and I figured maybe she was out on another run. I didn't think to go check her apartment or to call the cops for like a wellness visit, just a checkup. Because of her track record, these were things that were normal. And after that, my mother wound up in the hospital, and I called her while she was in the hospital and I asked her what's going on. And a couple of times while I was talking to her, she was like in and out, like she didn't even understand what was going on. Her boyfriend in the hospital, he was there talking shit to the doctors, and she wasn't getting properly looked at because of the way that he was behaving, his behavior. I wind up going to the hospital. I wind up fighting to be her healthcare proxy. They had to do a meeting. I tried to get my mother removed to bring her up to PA. They told me she would die in transit. And in that process, I watched my mother wither away. And, I had to sign a DNR, like do not resuscitate her or anything like that. Before I signed that do not resuscitate, I was fighting to be the healthcare proxy because the boyfriend was on the paperwork and he was not in the right state of mind. And I had to fight this man that I didn't even know to make, healthcare decisions for my mother. And in the process, I'm going back and forth to New York every weekend, or every time they call me, I will have to leave work and go down there and then make some decisions for her. And in one particular time, they called me in the middle of the night and she stopped breathing. And they asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, well, leave the tube in. I'll come down there and we could talk about options. They were trying to get me to pull the plug. They were, doctors are really insensitive. They don't give a shit. It's all a business. And, she's been on Medicaid. She's a long-time active drug user. They don't give a fuck. They don't care, but she's my mother. No matter what she was, who she was, who she wasn't. And you know, I wind up, they wanted me to pull the plug, and I told them that I needed a day or two to think about it, and I drove back to Pennsylvania. I needed time to like think about, pulling the tube and just letting nature take its course. And I remember again on my knees and praying to God, man, and begging God. I remember I kneeled down by my bed and I just started praying and praying hard and begging God, like, hey, man, I've been through a lot in my life. And, can you please do me a solid? I don't want to make this decision. This isn't for me. This is for her to make. She needs to do this for her. And I can't make that decision to pull the plug on her. And in the middle of my prayer, I felt like something warm touched my shoulder, and it caused me to stop praying. They called me at like 2 o'clock in the morning that my mother pulled out the tube on her own. She ripped the tube out her throat. And there it was. She made her decision. And, I had to drive back to New York, and I had to make a lot of decisions. I signed the do not resuscitate order, do not intubate. I signed everything, and at the time that I was signing it, the doctors told me, like, yeah, she's sedated, she's out. And, when I signed the paperwork, as soon as I finished signing, I felt her looking at me. And when I turned, her eyeballs were wide open, and she was just staring at me. And she couldn't talk because her throat was so sore because of the tube. And she was murmuring, "Thank you," with her mouth. She was saying, like, "Thank you for like signing that paper. I don't want to be here anymore." And, it was, I couldn't believe that, like, it was over for her. And she knew it. And she was clear-minded. She knew exactly what she was doing. And I knew exactly what I was doing. I was helping her along her way. Even though she couldn't help me along in mine, I had to help her along in hers. And eventually, after a couple of times of going back and forth, I went to leave. It was September 18th, 2018. I had to put on hospice, and then, I just whispered in her ear before I left, and I told her, I love you. Thank you for the years you've given me. But now it's time to go. It's time for you to move on. And that was just what took place, So I'm gonna stop here. I'll definitely, I'll just finish up, my episode and what took place after that. Like from the minute that I spoke to her in her ear and told her, like the things that I needed to tell her. And I told her, it's time to go. Like you've done everything that you could do in this life, And, I went and after that, I wound up getting in the car and I wound up leaving back to Pennsylvania. had to go to work the next morning. They called me by the time as soon as I got off the highway, they called me, and they told me she had passed away. You know, and it was over. You know, but I was there the whole time. But on my next episode, I'll just unpack like everything that took place after that, and it's just a lot, you know, that took place. There's a lot of things that happened, and definitely I would like to share it, and you know, thank you for listening. Please, if you could like, share, subscribe. Anybody that needs to be heard, that needs an ear, or just needs a little direction, a little help, I could definitely help you out. Just reach out, man. Send me a message. Send me a private message. You know, pardon me, this is a difficult one. But we're going to get back to it, and God bless you guys. Thank you for listening.